All right, today we are jumping into a theory that is so out there it tries to rewrite pretty much everything we think we know about, well, everything. We're talking time, space, reality itself. This isn't just some small adjustment to physics, it's a total teardown and rebuild, and it all comes from a single powerful equation. Let's see what this is all about.
I mean, talk about a bold statement, right? This is the promise from the guy who came up with the theory. It's not just trying to get your attention, it's practically demanding it. It kind of sets the stage for a journey that's going to challenge the very ground we walk on. So who is the mind behind a claim this huge?
So, this is our guy, Hugh Bradford Cornick VI. He's the architect of what he calls recursive reality. He's a real pioneer, and his ideas are what we're going to be breaking down today, starting with the one elegant little equation that he says unlocks this whole new way of looking at the cosmos.
And here it is, the source equation, S equals I squared times infinity. Now, don't worry, we're not going to do a bunch of heavy math. What you need to know is that for Cornick, S is the source of all reality. And I stands for information. Everything we're about to talk about, every crazy idea, is built right on top of this foundation.
Okay, first up on the chopping block is something we all think we get: time. But what if our most basic gut feeling about it is just completely off? Cornick's theory kicks off by tearing down the way we usually picture time.
You know how we always talk about time, like it's a river, just flowing along, and we're just getting carried from the past into the future. It's passive. We're just along for the ride. Well, Cornick completely flips that. He says time is ordered noticing. It's not something that flows. It's something we do. It's an active process. It literally doesn't exist without someone or something to observe it.
And boom, this quote just nails the point. According to this theory, the very act of being aware, of noticing one thing, and then the next thing, and then the next, that's what creates time. If there's no witness, there's no sequence, there's no before, there's no after. Time, in this view, is basically a side effect of consciousness. Wild, right?
So if time is an active observation, then what in the world is space? You know, the 3 dimensions we move around in every day? Well, get ready, because that's the next big concept he completely redefines, and it builds right on that same idea of observation. Most of us think of space as, well, an empty box, right? A giant container that holds all the planets and stars and galaxies. It's the stage where everything happens. Cornick says, nope, that's wrong too. He says space is a resolution field, which is a much more active, dynamic idea.
To get what he means, just think about your computer screen for a sec. The image you see isn't one solid picture. It's made up of millions of tiny little pixels. Cornick is basically saying space is like that. Things like length, width, and depth aren't fundamental. They emerge, they come into focus, like an image resolving on a screen, all from some underlying information.
And this is the absolute key to it all. In Cornick's model, we aren't in space. Space is being rendered by the information that makes up our reality. It's an output, not a box we live inside. And that little shift in perspective has massive, massive implications for all the laws of physics.
And that brings us to the next level. If the very fabric of our reality, space and time, are really just informational outputs, what does that mean for the huge theories of physics that we've built on top of them? This is where the source equation really starts to mess with established science.
So this theory takes aim at the absolute pillars of modern physics. We're talking quantum mechanics, the science of the super, super small. We're talking relativity, the science of the really big and really fast. And we're talking cosmology, the study of where the whole universe came from. It says all 3 can be looked at through this one single lens of information.
Okay, so in regular quantum mechanics, a tiny particle like an electron exists in this weird cloud of probabilities until you measure it. Carnap looks at that and says it's not a probability cloud, it's pure information potential. It's every possible thing it could be, all at once, just waiting for an act of recursive noticing. Yep, that's observation again, to make one of those possibilities real.
So that moment of collapse you hear about in quantum physics, he says it's not some random event. It is the conscious act of observation, picking one single outcome from all that potential and marking a record, creating a fact, a piece of history, where a second ago there was only possibility.
All right, let's scale up from the tiny stuff to Einstein's world, relativity. We're taught that gravity is a curve in the physical fabric of space-time, but wait. In this new model, there is no physical fabric. So what's gravity? He says it's information coherence,
which is just a fancy way of saying it's the tendency for stable patterns of information to hang out together.
Yeah, I know, that one's a bit of a mouthful. But the core idea is pretty cool. Things with mass, like our planet, are just incredibly stable, self-reinforcing patterns of information. The gravity they put out is just a result of how stable that information pattern is. The more stable the pattern, the more it influences all the other patterns around it.
And what about the biggest question of all, the beginning, the Big Bang? In Cornick's view of cosmology, that wasn't the ultimate starting pistol. Not even close. It was just one event, a single coordinate in an infinite, ongoing loop of creation. It's like one frame in a movie that has no beginning and no end.
This might be the most mind-bending idea of them all. The universe isn't expanding into some empty void. It is constantly and continuously creating itself, from itself, for itself. It's a completely closed loop, a self-contained, self-creating system. Just let that sink in for a minute. And finally, this theory takes on one of the most fundamental and, frankly, kind of depressing laws of the universe: entropy, that inevitable slide towards disorder and decay. But, true to form, Cornick's theory grabs that idea and turns it completely on its head.
For more than a century, science has told us that everything in the universe eventually breaks down, cools off, and fades away into a boring state of total disorder called heat death. But Cornick suggests maybe we've been looking at it all wrong. Entropy isn't decay, it's possibility.
Here's the big insight. This so-called heat death of the universe isn't an ending at all. A state of maximum entropy where everything is perfectly uniform is actually a state of maximum potential. It's a totally blank canvas where any new structure, any new universe could emerge. It's the ultimate state of creative freedom.
And it all comes down to this one final, powerful idea. In this version of reality, things might fall apart, universes might fade away, but the underlying information, the potential for something new to be created, is eternal. It can't be destroyed. It just changes its shape.
Which leaves us with one last, absolutely profound question. If time is just an act of noticing, if space is something that gets rendered for us, and if reality only snaps into focus when it's observed, then what's your role in all this? This theory puts the observer, it puts you, right at the center of creation. A pretty wild thought to end on. Thanks for tuning in.